All proceeds from this series will go to Samaritans. Donation link in the description. Hey there, my name's Ruin and welcome back to the Fazlore Podcast. Today I'm here with JokerNoob.
Yes, sir. Hello.
And today we'll be covering Help Wanted. What was Help Wanted? So, if you could describe it, how would you describe Help Wanted, just in general?
Help Wanted. Help Wanted is a VR. This is the first VR title that FNAF has seen. It's mainly a port of the first 3 FNAF games that have then been turned into VR. But in addition, it's also it's obviously an experience that is lore related, right? It happens in universe. It is an in-universe VR game. Generally speaking, though, the game is it's a collection of little mini games that have been VRified, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I feel like lore-wise as well, it was definitely the first kind of big kicking off of the lore, because AR kind of hinted to it, but this was definitely the first game of the new kind of era, I'd say.
Yeah, also it came first, right?
Did it come before AR?
It did come before AR, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh no,
Yeah.
have I said something wrong earlier on? Oh no. I'll edit it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Post.
It was definitely the new kind of era of FNAF, definitely a whole
Yeah.
new marker. Although people obviously thought Glitch Trap was William at the time. I feel like it was the start of the Mimic era in general.
Yeah. It was very interesting too, because a lot of people thought the story was over, right?
Yeah.
It was, it was dead and gone. It ended with FNAF 6 and Ultimate Custom Nights. People didn't really think that this game was gonna have lore. And then of course, then it was that first FNAF VR teaser that had that source code stuff about remembering Jeremy and stuff, and that kind of awakened the theorists.
Oh yeah, they sensed the source code and suddenly started rising from their graves.
Yeah. Mad Pat awoke from his casket,
Returned
rose
from
up from the
retirement.
dead. Yeah.
Oh, also, a quick question unrelated to this. Are you filming your camera, or do you have a sprite I can add in afterwards?
I have some sprites.
Peak. Okay. Anyway, moving back to that. Yes, there's. I feel like having it in the source code as a teaser was such a good start, because it's something very classic FNAF, like how we discovered William Afton's name was Afton and not Vincent.
Yeah, definitely. It's a classic FNAF trick, So yeah, definitely. I don't recall if it was in the source code or if it was in the actual image, like a brightening up. I think it was in the source code. I'm not quite sure.
I feel like either way, they're both very classic FNAF. I think something that maybe was missed in games like Security Breach is that kind of really interwoven stuff you can only see if you brighten up an image, or if you open up the entire code for it, the image, or when you save an image.
Definitely. I completely agree. I think I kind of wish Security Breach had more teasers that kind of played into the game more, because a lot of the teasers for Security Breach were just concept art, But yeah. Yes. No.
I feel like something quite big about the game as well was being able to see the animatronics up close. I think that was the biggest part of that game, is you could see the sheer size of them, and the kind of just concept of being there with them was something we'd never really seen before.
Definitely. It was the first time we actually saw them as models as well, right? It was the first properly 3D FNAF game. So it was a very big thing for FNAF, because we could actually inspect them closely now, And we even got those parts and service minigames to show us the inner working mechanisms of the robots and stuff.
It was definitely theorist food in general, much little bits of content, but even just being able to inspect the animatronics gives the kind of when you start counting fingers and toes, that gave a whole new perspective to it.
Definitely. I think it was also just really special to get to now, especially since at that time the series was kind of over. It was kind of cool to get to revisit those locations now in a way where we could actually look around them and look a little closer and notice new things. It was very special.
Coming front face to face, because I believe was Ennard in Help Wanted 1, or was that in 2? The Ennard's vent sections.
The Ennard vent section was in 1, but Ennard does reappear in 2, so you're not mistaken for mixing that up.
Yeah, and I feel like seeing characters like Ennard close up was like something completely different and so refreshing as well, because Ennard was something that's always been creepy ever since like FNAF sister location, when it's kind of scraping into the room. That is horrifying. So to see them like there,
Oh my god, definitely. I'm right there with you. I think, yeah, Ennard is one of the more freaky designs as well, in my opinion. Yeah.
It's kind of similar to the puppet in how that kind of humanoid face gives the Mandela effect. That's why the puppet has always been the scariest to me, is because it's just so humanoid but not at the same time, and it's just disgusting.
Oh, the puppet freaks me out. I think with Ennard, there's a new like alien element of the fact that it kind of it has all those like wires and has all these creases, and the fact that it looks so complex kind of makes it so like hard to decipher. You know, it's kind of like sensory overload looking at it. Which when it gets up in your face, especially in like VR, it just makes it really like, you know, scary.
I feel like lore-wise as well, it was really interesting to be able to see what Ennard looked like overall. Because obviously, like, it's really unnerving to see in general, but to see how it's kind of put together, how it worked, it definitely gave a couple answers, like, just practical answers to stuff from prior games, which is quite nice. It's not like changing what we know, but adding to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think like seeing some of the characters move was really special as well. Like for me, specifically seeing like how Mangle actually moves, like feasibly is able to crawl around was very cool. And I think the puppet, I don't know if you've gotten this in like FNAF VR, but in FNAF 2, when the puppet's out of its music box, you can see it like floating down the hallway with like this playful like floating walk cycle. It's amazing. Like seeing that kind of stuff just really adds to that like. It's not much, but it really does like add to the vibes, you know, knowing more about these characters and how they move.
It was definitely, I'd say, the best way to start the whole new era, because having them move like that shows so much attention to detail, and having to make big scale models like that shows such a attention to detail and care for the series in general. So I think it was such a good way to start it, because it's showing like, okay, we're a new studio, but you can trust us because look how much detail we put in this game. We have to have research for that.
Yeah, not to hop too far ahead of like schedule here, but I think the way Glitchtrap moves is especially really cool. Like he has like this weird he's like I love Glitchtrap.
He's nasty.
He is nasty. Yeah, no. Definitely.
I think just Glitchtrap in general, when he appears to the side, you just see him waving. Like, there's no indication at all what this is until you find the tapes. And then the more tapes you find, the closer he's getting. Like, the way you have no idea what this thing is, but he's getting closer and there's nothing you can do was crazy.
It's especially, like, it's really cool because of the way the game's structured, right? It does that thing where the hub is your safe space, you enter a mini game, and, like, you know, that's when things are, like, that's when it's danger, right? And so by establishing that like safe space in the game, the fact that Glitchtrap starts appearing there, you know, it really does add to that like creepy pasta-esque like the virus is like corrupting the game, because you really get this feeling of like this is not supposed to happen, you know, like there is not supposed to be somebody there. This is supposed to be, you know, this is the game's menu, pretty much. So he really doesn't feel like he's supposed to be there, and that really makes him like, again, it makes him feel really alien and weird. Like he's not like the other characters.
Yeah, it's the same vibes as in like Help Wanted 2, where
you realize you actually have had a mask on your face the entire time and you take it off. It's those kind of vibes of like, okay, you're in a game, there's a very basic concept, throw that concept out the window because everything you thought you understood, like safe areas, like, you know, the game, you add things to it, it's completely changed. It's not the same at all.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I completely agree. It definitely, I really do like how Steelwool did that as well, you know, how they really did go there to make like these other areas feel unsafe. And I think that's it's a very smart creative decision, because that is like, it really adds that paranormal feeling that I feel like you'd even get from like games like FNAF 1, you know, like the things that make this kind of horror, and this is a horror FNAF taps into a lot, is this idea that like you get an understanding of how things are supposed to be, and then they're not anymore. And it really creates this feeling of like, you know, it creates a feeling of like, you know, a haunting feeling. It's kind of the same, for me it reminds me of Golden Freddy from FNAF 1, you know. Similarly, you're taught there that, you know, the office is your safe space, things will only get in if you let them in, but then when Golden Freddy appears, it upends the entire thing, because now you see a poster that changed, and now there's a character that's just in your office, and it's, you know, it's the exact same kind of thing. Yeah, he's just there, and that's like, terrifying, because like, what are you supposed to do with that? It's done. And that really adds Yeah.
Yeah, no, keep going. I was agreeing with you.
No, all I was gonna say is it's reality bending. You know, it feels reality bending, especially when the game is able to set up that reality first and then break it. You know, it's good horror direction, and it's cool that Steel Wool understood that from day one.
Yeah, it was definitely, as I said, it was definitely showing off that this was a whole new kind of game, but Steel Wool basically saying to the player, this is new, I know it's new, I know you're going to be like not the happiest that it's so different, but bear with, because it's already got kind of familiar elements to it, but it's really using the fact that it's a VR to its advantage as much as it physically can do, having the things like Blitz Trap, the cutscenes where you can reach in and grab it inside an animatronic. That is so cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think and it's good that Steel Wool like they really did hold true to the source material. Like, I feel like Security Breach, if you look at Help Wanted 1 and Help Wanted 2, you can immediately see how they kind of slow played it, right? Because Help Wanted 1, you don't move many places. It's very much like the old FNAF games. You click here, you go here, you click here, you go here. Even the hubs work like that. It's only until after they introduced games like Security Breach and Ruin where they then in Help Wanted 2 were able to be like, oh, look, now you can walk around the hub. Like, that's FNAF now, you know? But it wasn't at that time. And so they needed to kind of earn the trust of the fans. And I think it's a really... And again, it's perfect anyway, because FNAF is sit and survive gameplay, and VR kind of has to be sit and survive gameplay most of the time, at least back then. So it really was like... It's a match made in heaven, FNAF and VR, already.
Yeah, it's very much... Same as how like Secret and the Mimic is meant to be VR soon, because it's very much... showing off that this is a whole new era of FNAF. Like, sure, there are like still some overlapping things, but it's very much separating itself, saying we're not going to touch, well, originally, we're not going to touch the pre-existing lore, we're just going to kind of add to it, kind of like, you know, give you the things you love about the old games without changing what the old games were.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair though, FNAF VR did have that bombshell like in the first like 5 minutes where it's like, all these games are just games made by a rogue indie developer. Like, I think that one threw me off guard when I first saw it. I don't think fans were very happy with that twist immediately, but I mean, I think they were able to integrate it well now. Which is good.
Because obviously it was half a bit, but at the same time, it's kind of clear now, like, just because there were games made of it, it doesn't necessarily mean that the original games you played are those games. It might just be different in-universe games, because obviously something in, like, Sister Location, we wouldn't have seen, you know, the average person making rogue indie games wouldn't have understood something like Ennard and stuff. Although it isn't Help Wanted, it's a whole new can of worms, but...
yeah, exactly. I think Scott Cawthon even said in a post at some point about, like, you know, the whole theory that Scott Cawthon is now canon, right? He said, like, the reason he added himself as like a self-insert was because, you know, he needed to take characters that were, I think the wording used was that he needed to take characters that were canon, questionably canon, not canon, and he just slapped them into one title. So that was his natural way. If he wanted to make it, and he needed to take these non-canon characters and put them in a title that was canon. So he said like this was kind of his way of solving that. Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah, yes. I think there maybe could have been other ways to potentially do it from a lore perspective, but I don't necessarily think this way of doing it was a bad way. I think it was definitely a really good way to pull everything together for like canon and non-canon characters to have them in universe, because in general, Help Wanted is a game within a game, so it was obviously quite complicated to make that balance of characters that existed and characters that don't exist, or characters that you don't know if they exist, or kind of only some people should know that they even exist in the first place. So yeah,
I mean, I honestly there's also the problem of like character, like answering how would they even know about those characters, you know? Like, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there are characters that feasibly Fazlore Entertainment should not know about, because like how would they know about Ennard? They didn't create Ennard. Ennard created itself. So like they have no feasible explanation of why Fazlore Entertainment would know what Ennard is, and so therefore, you know, it creates some lore issues. And again, I agree. Like, I personally, I don't think it was like, I can accept it because it has very little bearing on the lore, but I'm personally not the biggest fan of the direction they went with that specific plot point, just because like it's very Scott, you know. He did that lore for the gameplay. It's the same reason why Mangle is somehow a take apart, put back together attraction, even though that also makes no feasible sense. It's just cool. It's dope.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people tend to forget in general is at the end of the day, Scott's lore is limited. It's why I've included 2 segments, which is for all the episodes, which is what was the lore at the time and what do you think it might be now. Because there is such a difference because Scott doesn't always know where he's going. At the end of the day, he's always only been one guy working on the game until Help Wanted, so it's very understandable the mistakes were made.
Yeah, definitely. And it is kind of just like, and Scott's always had this like problem, or not problem. I personally think it's fine, but it's obviously when it comes to writing lore, he doesn't write the story and then create the elements. To me, I feel like it's pretty obvious he has elements and then he wants to put them in the game because they're super cool, and he just needs to figure out like, okay, how is this gonna make sense? And then he finds some kind of way to make it make sense. So I think personally, Help Wanted executed that quite all right. You know, it was just a small little thing, shouldn't really be focused on too much, but it's just to like, you know, get the ball rolling, you know, so you can do a lot of cool stuff. Yeah,
it makes
definitely.
sense. It was, as I said, there's definitely better ways to have done it, but I think overall it worked out quite well. But
Yeah, agree.
yeah, what was the lore at the time? So, is there any like big theories you think might have changed at the time, or any like big theories in general that were around then? Like, what do you kind of think the lore was when it first came out?
So I think like obviously there's a difference between what was the actual lore and what was the lore people interpreted, but I think like, you know, at the time, Help Wanted had a surprisingly like it wasn't straightforward, but some of the games get pretty messy. So I would argue that it had like a pretty easy to understand like surface plot, you know. The lore I would argue that the lore of Help Wanted hasn't really changed that much. Like, you play as a beta tester for Fazlore Entertainment. They're starting up again. And they you know, want to cover up what's happened because they have a very bad reputation. So they create a horror game to try to like creepypastify, kind of like in FNAF 3, except now it's Fazlore Entertainment themselves doing it. They want to like kind of make all the scary like real stuff that happened there seem like a spooky urban legend, right? They want to kind of own that so they can profit off of it, and by proxy make people kind of associate that. They want to make people associate real lore with fictional lore, so they quite literally make real murders into lore. And then of course you're a beta tester, and you know you're beta testing the game. But then, of course, some issues arise when, to save time, they scan old circuit boards to recover code. And one like piece of code has gone rogue and begins infecting the game. And we learned this through, you know, a set of tapes left by a previous beta tester who was trying to stop it. And it's pretty obvious, especially from like, you know, the design and stuff and the way it acts, that this rogue code in some way is William Afton. It is some kind of remnant of William Afton. It was a little bit of debate whether it was actually Afton or if it was some kind of manifestation, you know, maybe some kind of just something that was replicating him, which is ironic that people thought that at the time. But you know, it was Afton in some regard, right? And eventually Afton then, around the end of the game, spoilers, at least pretty much in all the endings, finds a way to, you know, put you down and essentially escape through you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the lore, you know? That was what the lore was at the time. And again, I would argue it didn't really change much.
Yeah. So I would say, like, as well, there are a few different theories at the time, which kind of, like, is worth discussing, I think. So I think you're very much right, like, now that obviously we know it was Mimic. But there was a few theories going around the time. So, obviously, the biggest one is Glitchtrap being actually William Afton, in that his agony inflicted the computer chip. So, it's almost like, I mean, now we know it's probably the Mimic1 program, but do you think there was actually any agony inflicted as well there? Do you think there was potential?
Well, I definitely think they were leading us in that direction initially, because, and MatPat actually brought this up, right? Because initially it could have been either one, you know? It wasn't really Afton, but he was behaving like him, and he was kind of painting the story of what he had done, and kind of like showing that, you know, when you bring forth old scars, like, it will manifest into something like this, you know?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people thought that Glitchtrap could have been anything. It could have been some kind of just like memory, but then then Steelwool did a little funny thing because they made a mobile port of Help Wanted, and they made a little minigame called Princess Quest in it. Because they couldn't include the tapes. And in that game, at the very end of Princess Quest 1, just like in Security Breach, you meet Glitchtrap. And Glitchtrap has some distorted audio and distorted text. And when you decoded that text and decoded the audio, you could hear a very clear message that went, "I always come back, let me out." And that is a very funny thing to say, because that sounds like something Afton would say. And it's kind of like, like, of course, now it may have been the Mimic, kind of like doing that to be Afton, but at the time we didn't have that basis, that kind of like fundamental basis to understand that. Obviously, Occam's razor, the most obvious solution would be that Afton's back, hence why he's saying he is, and that he wants to be let out, right? The evidence of like the Din monster saying "I always come back," paired with the context of Ultimate Custom Night being his prison. People kind of, the Occam's razor, they drew the most obvious conclusion. Afton has escaped his damnation. He is back. He is, here, and he wants out of, the game that he's now in. So, that's kind of like, that was the conclusion people drew at the time, that it kind of had to be Afton. So, yeah, that kind of be my take on that, like, piece of lore.
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely a mislead by almost half question Steelwool's direction there, because obviously with Security Breach following it, again, we'll talk more about that in the next segment, but with Security Breach following it, to have it seem as if it was Afton really caused a lot of controversy within the fandom, because obviously the idea of Afton coming back after all of this wasn't a generally accepted idea. And I think they really, as you said, did lead it up to be Afton himself, very much misled it, and I'm not sure that was the best course going forward, considering, like, especially after Security Breach, the game's kind of reputation kind of got a bit wrecked around a bit, and I'm not sure it's recovered since.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't quite know. I mean, I think, honestly, I do think the Mimic was planned at least as far up as, like, Security Breach, because of some other details in the game. But I think maybe the Mimic was planned, but I don't think Steelwool knew that the Mimic was planned.
Yeah.
If so, because that kind of, like, lead up to Afton being back in Security Breach really does kind of, like, it feels like a natural progression. It kind of seems like that was where they were headed with that.
Yeah, and I mean, we were giving, so I remember when we had that interview recently where it turned out that the reason Security Breach hadn't come out so well is because Scott wasn't communicating it enough with Steelwool, so Steelwool couldn't really do anything. And I feel like it could potentially be a case of that here. Like, Scott might have specifically said, okay, make it seem as if Afton is coming. But they obviously took that as Afton is coming, so they gave really explicit lines like, I always come back, to then kind of have to balance it out later, I feel like.
Yeah, it could be that. I don't know how involved. I feel like, first of all, I think Scott got more involved with the writing after Security Breach. I don't know how involved he was back then. But also you can kind of see where he got this conception as well. Because again, in Help Wanted, if that's what he did, it worked quite all right, because it was just mini games with lore pieces, which, to contrast that with Security Breach, that was not what Security Breach was. It was a narrative experience that kind of followed a linear plot from beginning to end. So so I can see why, and it's definitely confusing. I'm not quite sure where they were going with that. It kind of does feel like there's a dual plot line going on, right? Because there were Mimic hints, but there were Afton hints, and I feel like if they wanted us to latch onto that, like, programming idea earlier, they had many ways in which they could have done that, So it doesn't feel like that was the conclusion they wanted us to draw, at least then, which, problematically led us in a very different direction. And so, that's yeah.
I can agree very much there. It's kind of, it was just odd, and I think it very much speaks of Scott and Steelwool not having the best communication at first, because it's pretty clear that they were given a direction both for Help Wanted and Security Breach, but not given clearer instructions. So Scott had a vision he wanted, but he didn't communicate that well enough, because I think Help Wanted is good in that it can tie in. It's a bit odd, certain details, but it can be Mimic. But Security Breach obviously was less so. I mean, especially considering like the whole, oh my god, it's William Afton. It shouldn't have existed at all. It was meant to be an endoskeleton peering in through the walls every now and then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like if they didn't want us to draw the conclusion that it was Afton, then I don't get why they had a purple rabbit monster say, "I always come back, let me out," and then the next game had a Springtrap walking out of a booth with the room so purple. I don't know what's going on. Like,
it was odd.
It was odd. It was a weird mislead. So yeah, no, it was that was. I think that I think you're right. I think Scott Cawthon didn't quite have the clearest communication, and I mean, fair enough. He didn't communicate with many companies. You know, he was making all these games on his own. So it was kind of like it was a big step for the franchise because other people were now touching the direction of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like another thing at the time as well, we had a very set view of Vanessa. And this is something that I think definitely changed later on. But again, I think for the next segment, but Vanessa in general was generally considered to be the protagonist here. The girl, actually, did we know it was Vanessa by this point? Or was it just, no, was it Tape Girl was most theory right now?
Okay, wait, so Vanessa was introduced in Dreadbear, right? So Vanessa wasn't a character in the main game, but when Dreadbear came out, we got the Vanny mask. And I believe there were some other clues that led us to believe, like, MatPat, like, quite literally said, and I don't know where he came to this conclusion. He said, "Oh, there's a Vanny mask. I think Vanny means Vanessa and Bunny combined." I don't know how he drew that conclusion. That's some sorcery because he does not reference any sources there. He just said it. So I don't know where we got the name Vanessa from, but Vanny was at least introduced in Curse of Dreadbear.
Yeah, let me Google. Was she introduced? When was Vanessa introduced? FNAF. So she was first introduced in Help Wanted, we know that, but where was her name introduced?
Well, I think it was in the files. It was in the files, because we had the Vanny mask, the White Rabbit mask, and then people saw that mask was labeled, like, Vanny mask or something. So
and then
people
obviously it was Bunny, so...
Yeah, it was a bunny, and then still, I don't know how one came to the conclusion that her name would be Vanessa through that. That it's still... I mean, there's not that many names that start with VAN, but it's a little bit wild.
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know at the time, another thing I was going to say as well is a big ongoing theory. It was that the protagonist was Jeremy. We were playing as Jeremy, not Vanessa, because we didn't know enough about Vanessa to be... Because obviously the FNAF AR emails were after Help Wanted. So at this point, what we thought it was Jeremy, because we had this repeated image of remember Jeremy, over and over and over again. So it was kind of, even in the teaser, it was either suspected to either be Jeremy or someone related to this Jeremy, until we find out Jeremy shredded his own face off. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I never ran into that theory myself, because I think that theory was a little bit controversial, because some people thought that we could somehow be Jeremy through some weird non-linear storytelling, but it is a little bit weird, right? Because Jeremy's revealed to have, we're hearing about Jeremy in past tense, so
yeah,
it's a little bit interesting, but yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, it was such an odd one, because, I mean, obviously in Help Wanted 2, we had this symbolism of Jeremy as well. I'm pretty sure, like, we had mentions of Jeremy again, if I remember.
Yeah, we did.
So it was like, because I remember my own personal theory was that the Jeremy in reference was actually MCI Jeremy. I still stand by that, but... I recall.
Yeah.
I'm still quite proud of that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time, it was such an odd one, because, everyone... It's just this Jeremy guy. He's just some guy whose face came off, and I guess it's trying to remind us, stay focused, remember what happened to this guy. Like, almost like Tape Girl is trying to help us here, saying, look, you need to focus in, because this is what's happened to the other person.
Yeah. Jeremy was after like he was kind of like a looming legend, a threat, right? Definitely. I think what complicated things even more was there was a Fazbear Fright story. I don't know, maybe it didn't come out around the time of Help Wanted. I think it came out a little later. But there was a Fazbear Fright story about a guy named Jeremiah who was called Jeremy by close people, who was a beta tester. But obviously his story was completely different because Fazlore Frights never wants to be coherent with the games. So yeah, no, there was some interesting stuff surrounding Jeremy, and honestly, I don't know quite where he fits into the story anymore, because like he is weird, especially if you like back then felt like a pretty clear kind of like the first victim. The question is, but like I don't quite know where Jeremy fits in anymore. Some people say that Jeremy is Cassie's father, which I like that theory, but I just don't know like how he carries on to Help Wanted 2, if so.
Yeah, because obviously in Help Wanted 2, he looks like he's some kind of helper bot because he then becomes Mattbot. So his soul has obviously transferred, but I don't see how his soul could get from a beta testing unit all the way to the Pizzaplex as a bot. It just seems a bit far-fetched.
Well, also, if you're playing as him in Help Wanted 2, I don't see how he could still be operational, especially since it is implied he died, because there is talks, like the tapes aren't in order, but we hear that he sliced off his face or did something in that room, and then all we know is that there was a lawsuit regarding him after. And I assume he was too cuckoo to file that lawsuit himself, so I don't know how that fits in. Maybe Jeremy just isn't a character that's relevant anymore. Maybe he was just that first victim.
Yeah, I mean, the general kind of theory with Cassie's dad / the Help Wanted 2 prototype, because they're very likely the same person. Something that was kind of set up is that the brains are inside the help bot. I don't remember where this came from, but there was some kind of graphic where the brains were actually inside. So again, if it's possible that Jeremy, because I think Cassie's dad got turned into a bot, and then Help Wanted 2 is just the training that staff bots go through, which is why he's dead at this point. He's kind of inside a staff bot. But it doesn't make sense.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Have you not heard that one before?
I never considered that. No, I never heard that.
Yeah, because if you look at most of the minigames, you're being trained to do them. Like, especially the cooking one, you're being taught how to do everything, how to do the juice machine, how to get, like, everyone employing. It's very much training.
But how does the mask off sections fit in with that? Because he does things that we see the changes of. Like, he puts on the mask on Roxy, which then, like, leads to Roxy looking like that in Ruin. So I don't quite, like, is that just, like, stuff he did before? Or, because I'm not quite sure how the unmasked sections work with that.
Yeah, so it might be like a chip in the brain or something, is what I'm wondering, because it almost seems like he doesn't know he's a robot at this point. And because when he does he's the one that gives Cassie the mask, he doesn't understand doing that, and by the end of the game it's almost like him looking and seeing he's doing that. So it almost feels like there's some kind of illusion that's implanted in the mask bots. If like all the staff bots are actually people inside them, it seems like there's some kind of illusion. When you have the mask on, you genuinely don't understand that you are a bot. You just kind of, everything's normal. But when you take off the mask, which is kind of like almost symbolism of how realizing that oh my god, I'm a robot, is kind of like that kind of concept, I believe.
It's very interesting in any case. I never heard that, because that makes a lot of sense if so, that he would be kind of reliving or like going through some kind of training program to be assimilated. That's interesting. I don't know, maybe the mask off sections are some kind of glitch trap stuff. Who knows? Yeah, no, that's interesting. I don't know if I fully buy it though.
I mean, something else that adds to it, though, is you might not actually be down there. You're not actually in the FNAF 6 pizzeria, because that might just be where you died. Because obviously Cassie's dad must have found something he shouldn't have done to die and have his death covered up. So it might even be that he died down there. So when he's taking off the mask, he's not actually looking at where he's at, but he's looking at almost memories. Like, instead of seeing what's really there, it's like a memory. Seeing Cassie later on, that's his memory coming back and being like, oh, that is my daughter, because he's obviously Mattbot. By that point, he is the Mattbot given thing. It's kind of almost even potentially even like a mind palace or something. It's an odd one, but I think it's definitely possible.
It's possible. I just the thing that trips me up is, of course, the ruined Roxy thing, because you put ruined Roxy's mask on in the game, and then ruined Roxy has that mask in Ruin. So I just don't understand how. Like, maybe did he do that before? I'm not sure. It's that's the part that trips me up a bit, but otherwise it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, there's definitely like concept to it. But so Jeremy, basically in summary, Jeremy is odd.
yes. That was a tangent.
Yeah. I feel like as well though, Jeremy ties into the concept going around that there was the cult of Glitch Trap, which I know is something I feel like you've mentioned a lot before. Would you like to explain what is the cult of Glitch Trap?
Yeah, the cult of Glitch Trap. I mean, that was a theory that MatPat proposed because we didn't really have any like direct protagonists at the time. Like MatPat proposed the idea that like the people are getting infected, and Glitch Trap eventually like Glitch Trap will in some way be like, I don't know, rebuilding his empire or whatever through the people he's infected, right? And that was of course in reference to like Vanny and stuff, because that was when we got some voice lines from Vanny in Curse of Dreadbear, where when you put on the mask and held the Glitch Trap plushie, you would hear like some dialogue. And the voice listing was referred to as reluctant follower.
It was
which led
another one.
Yeah, which led to the idea that like he would have reluctant followers who would be kind of doing his bidding, right? And setting him free. And so that's kind of where that theory comes from. I would argue it's still somewhat relevant because we do know there are several followers who still kind of like do what you have Vanessa, you have possibly Gregory. So that the theory is generally that it's the idea that there are followers of Glitch Trap, right? That are trying to do something that he wants.
It's definitely something I could still see being canon as well, because obviously Gregory, it's very likely also had the virus in him, because even though we've seen that he does act like a terrible child anyway, there is debate whether Gregory has also been infected, which means it would be possible for the Mimic1 program to be infecting 2 people at once. So it's not entirely off the table, but it's also a theory I think that wouldn't have as much backing if we didn't have the whole, is it Mimic1 or is it actually William Afton? I feel like that definitely influenced that.
Unless he's a robot, of course.
I still believe that.
I am falling back on your side. I didn't believe it, but after Secret of the Mimic, I see it a little bit, because that secret ending is weird. That secret ending is really weird. Yeah. It's
the way I jokingly said before the Secret of the Mimic, my kind of crack theory is that Gregory is an imitation of David. And now I'm not, he might even, and the fact that like everyone kind of hated on MatPat for saying he's an imitation of the crying child, where it's looking more and more likely now we know that Afton knew it was possible to make a mimic that imitated a child, and the whole I can put you back together. It's getting closer. Every game is getting a bit closer.
It is, especially because there's a picture of David sitting on a hill with the mimic. And very similar to how Gregory and Glamrock Freddy sit on a hill. I think it might even be the same hill. And David seems to be wearing a striped shirt.
Yeah, it's very. It makes sense as well, because Gregory's such an enigma, and I genuinely think MatPat was right, because even though he was like got so much backlash for it, a lot of people were focusing on the fact that it was like, oh, MatPat's saying they're the same color, that's why. Whereas it's like, no, there was a whole host of another evidence that continuously grows around why it is. It's not just the color scheme. There is so much potential there.
Yeah. There is something, because to me, like the robot parallels weren't super compelling, but to me the crying child parallels were very compelling to me, because and now I actually think, like, not to go stray too far off topic, but I feel like there has to be some connection between crying child and David as well. There has to be a connection between the 3 of them. The trinity of dead kids. There has to be something connecting the 3, because they all have a similar like appearance. And they all seem to get themselves in similar situations. They all seem to get themselves robotic friends and end up in dangerous situations regarding machinery. So
yeah, it's too specific at this point. I feel like Security Breach didn't do a good job of conveying it, but I definitely think if Security Breach was done as it was like Scott's vision was for it, it definitely would have had much more evidence that Gregory's a robot child, because I feel like even like the books are trying to show us, hey, something's off about this Gregory, something's weird.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I think the fact that he's Patient 46 is incredibly interesting. Yeah.
Because I mean, have you read the new Pizzaplex book?
Have not actually, but you can spoil it. I don't care.
So essentially, Gregory as a child was kind of evil anyway.
So he was risking
Yeah.
Cassie's life because he found it funny, and he'd actually been tampering with the animatronics much way earlier before we thought. So he is intelligent enough to interact and change animatronics around, and he also did have this kind of like menacing, like he was willing to risk Cassie's life because he thought it was all a joke. And I think the canon ending is obviously Cassie doesn't die, but it's very, it's very, very risky. It's very odd. So Gregory in himself is such an odd character, and I think a lot of it would make sense if he was a robot. And I've actually talked about this in everyone's episode so far, but it's very much that we're missing a few puzzle pieces now. I think a Secret Mimic DLC and a sequel to Security Breach will give us all the answers in between.
Yeah, to me, especially with Gregory, I find his communications, or like there are certain things about him I find very interesting, especially when it comes to those like therapy logs, because they're specifically, and this feels like the reason why I think the Mimic was planned earlier is because of these therapy logs, because he supposedly has a computer program that mimics him, or he has some kind of program that repeats phrases, and then he also is apparently incredibly good at self-dialogue. Both of those things feel incredibly important to his character, I think.
Yeah. I feel like it adds to the overall theme of it as well, of like humanity versus AI. We now have like Mimic, who was a child once upon a time in itself as a robot and went evil, whereas we have Gregory, who is an absolute menace, but not necessarily evil, not inherently evil yet, and it's very much building up to that theme. I think it's very clear.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I feel like a theme that I find very prevalent. It's interesting you bring up, like, because I also notice like there's like a common theme in these like Steelpool games, and I don't think it's like just AI stuff. It's, to me, I've always described like the undertone of all of the Steelpool games as like, who's really the robot? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because they have this theme of like, even like the human characters, like they're following instructions under the threat of death, like doing all this like labor and like following these instructions while the robots are going haywire. And it kind of almost feels like who's the real one who's executing the programmatic, if that's a word, commands, you know?
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Yeah, there's some interesting like free will stuff. Like, yeah, definitely. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm excited to see where they go with it.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. What is the lore now? We're kind of discussing this now, but the game lore now is very intertwined and very different to what we believed. But would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that I think it's pretty obvious that Glitchtrap is the M2 program. That's my opinion. I think he's the M2 program. I think that at some point between Secret of the Mimic and Help Wanted in that original 1-6 saga, William Afton had used it to he's corrupted it with his own William Aftonness, and that's why it behaves the way it does now. I think there's a and you know, through that Glitchtrap manifests, and then from there things seem to be pretty similar. I think that it's very likely that people who are infected are being infected through in my opinion, at least, I think they're being infected through the brain chips that we see in Ruin.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. It has to be some kind of like reprogramming the brain through occipital implants or whatever. And you know, I think other than that, like, we got more explanations and context behind Help Wanted, but otherwise, it, you know, seems to be mostly the same. There's an entity in the game that shouldn't be there, and it's beginning to tamper with the code, and it is using the people as its hosts to spread itself. Though, I will note one thing. There does still seem to be somewhat a divide between Glitchtrap and Mimic. And
yeah,
because there's a Glitchtrap plush and a Tiger Rock plush, and they are different. They are different entities. I also want to use this moment to slip in a little theory I thought of recently that might be interesting. And that is whether Glitchtrap is a general persona for the Mimic, or because we know that Vanessa's last name starts with an A, and her father is supposedly named Bill. And in the movie, her father's William Afton. So there seems to be some connection between her and William Afton. And I'm beginning to wonder whether maybe Vanessa had a pre-established connection to Afton unrelated to Glitchtrap, and the only reason the Mimic is posing as Glitchtrap is to manipulate Vanessa. It's a persona it specifically puts on when it's communicating with Vanessa and nobody else. That's one thing I wonder, and that's why it behaves in the way it does. Because I feel like otherwise it kind of feels a little bit weird and arbitrary why it would just mimic Afton. But that's just a theory. But that's how just an interesting tidbit that I noticed, or that I thought of.
Oh no, it's definitely a good one. I definitely can see where you're coming from, especially with the movie references. But one thing I kind of do wonder at the moment is because obviously in the books, both Mimic, the endoskeleton, and Mimic1 program were different. Because the Mimic endoskeleton runs with the Mimic1 program, but the Mimic1 program itself is completely different, which I think is really odd, because if the Mimic1 program is different, it's the Mimic1 itself is imitating Afton and Glitchtrap, whereas the Mimic endoskeleton is acting of its own accord, because even how the Mimic endoskeleton in Ruin still has his arm kind of in that position of holding Tiger Rock like David used to, he's very much still more human, and it seems to be acting significantly more in self-defense than anything, whereas Glitchtrap is obviously going after people, so I almost wonder if we're going to find that divide.
I will note though that Burntrap also has the Tiger Rock clutch. So I think whatever program is Glitchtrap is the same one that was David at a point. I think it's evolved. Because Burntrap does that. Now I find that super interesting. I think, because in my opinion, I think that we hear in Secret of the Mimic that Phasma Entertainment were really excited about M2. It was leaked to them, and they really wanted it. And Edwin's like, they can't have it. And I think my headcanon right now, as of the moment, is kind of there's an M1 program. That's Fiona, Mimic1. And then there's a Mimic2 program, that's David. And the Mimic, it's David, Edwin, Merge, Violence, Mimic. That's Mimic2.
Yeah.
And then there's one endoskeleton that hosts both of them at different points. And the latest one it's hosting is M2. And I think that Glitchtrap is the M2 program. Because these are the same program, right? They're programs that are...
Yeah. Same
all
kind
they
of
do
system.
is... It's the same system. It mimics and it learns, and then it does that, and it eventually builds up a lot of data. So it's the same program with different save files, you could say. It has different data in it. M1 is Fiona, and M2 has the David Edwin stuff. And I think, at least in my opinion, I think whenever William Afton tampered with it, I think he tampered with M2 specifically. I think because you see the Tiger Rock clutch with Burntrap, I think that it's Edwin. It's the violent one. He took the violent one, and then he progressed it further. He kept training M2, and eventually turned it into Glitchtrap somehow. That's my headcanon.
Yeah. I almost wonder if he extracted the program itself out, because obviously against that endoskeleton, no one had a chance. He's too strong, but if he almost figured out a way to take the program out. But I think the biggest thing with Security Breach endings is only one is canon. So you can't look at them as to what happened, but you more have to look at them and think, right, what did Scott tell them for this to happen? As you're saying, maybe they specifically said, have that hold, because that hold is there. That feels very intentional. But as well, we were never meant to see the Mimic. He was only meant to be hiding in the walls. So it's that's the hardest thing about Security Breach, is you have to decipher what was the intention rather than what we actually see. Because what we're seeing in the game isn't what was necessarily meant to be happening overall, but behind the scenes, there was obviously something told. They were told a very limited amount of knowledge, but that amount of knowledge is what we need to take from it, which means about 90% of the game, we don't need to take anything from it, because it's wrong, essentially. The lore of it is either wrong or it's irrelevant, whereas that 10% is what we need, and it's so hard to figure out what that 10% is as opposed to what isn't useful.
Definitely, though I generally use the rule of thumb, this one rule whenever I study Security Breach, and that is kind of I've watched these videos that decode the kind of the archaeology of the game to kind of get an idea of how the game was developed, and it's they say that the game was initially going to be open world-esque, not open world, but it was going to be a little more free, and that's why you have these sections. And then of course they ran out of time, so they kind of had to lead you through these sections rather than having you explore and find them on your own. And so I think that when you're theorizing about security breach, you can look at these individual pieces, but you just don't look at the context that surrounds them. You actually need to ignore context, because the context could be anything. But I do think that Burn Trap having that Tiger Rock clutch, I think that's very deliberate, and I don't think there's any way Scott could have framed that to where they would have accidentally given Burn Trap that. I think Burn Trap has it because he's the Mimic. But Burn Trap isn't the OG Mimic body. That's also something I find interesting.
Yeah.
It's a different endo, which makes me think that maybe Vanny was building an M3 body.
Yeah. And that entirely makes sense, because it's just difficult, because obviously the Burn Trap doesn't exist. He wasn't in there. He doesn't likely exist, because as we know, all the endings except the Princess Quest one aren't canon. So it's like, and that's what I mean, like, because you're saying you're right, it was intentional the way that arm is held, but you have to think, how did Scott describe this to them? Did they say, because it seems like Scott probably specified it, considering in Ruin they kept that specific detail. That's one of the things that was right, that was communicated properly from Scott, and those are they're so valuable, those little snippets of information, because that's what Security Breach was meant to be.
Yeah, I do think though that, like, it's important to note that even though those endings aren't canon, they could have happened. I think like, even if the Burn Trap ending wouldn't have happened as it happens, you know, like it probably, you know, if it probably wasn't intentional that it was supposed to like move around like that and do all these things. I do think that Burn Trap, there being a Springtrap looking endoskeleton that has a Tiger Rock clutch, that is a detail that's relevant, you know?
Oh no, I agree, because it might not necessarily have been something that moved, but it easily could have been something that was in containment and we found just kind of sitting there doing nothing because it wasn't activated.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You got it. Yes.
The only difference, though, I would say when you mentioned free roam is that one specific cutscene where when we got the first trailer, there's a scene with Vanessa watching us go down a tube. And to me, that's quite cutscene-y, so I'd find that a bit harder to see in a completely free roam narrative, because that's clearly a transition from one scene to another, from one area to another. So I feel like even if it was completely free roam, there had to be some aspect of a narrative going forward overall.
Yeah, I would agree, but I also, another thing I saw in relation to that was that probably wasn't a scene in the game, that was just like a purely like a trailer thing, because supposedly, like, if you look at where that area is, it wouldn't make any sense. Supposedly, again, I don't know, but I watched a video on that specifically went over that, like, the place where that happens and how it kind of happens, it would not, like the floor that you're going down to, based on like even like the old maps for the old layout of the Pizzaplex, wouldn't exist, which is interesting. So I don't know, but ultimately, like, that is interesting, you know. Yeah, but I do think it would have like a main narrative, but I think that maybe that narrative would be more user defined. So like, you would maybe go to different areas and maybe things would happen, but like, it would be a little more like up to you. In what order those events happen. Yeah, in what order things happen, for example. Because we see in the early trailers that Gregory's Fazwatch has like an actual like clock that, based on its design, kind of looks like it's supposed to move in real time to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm not sure. We will never know.
Yeah.
But yeah. But
yeah, that's the big thing with Security Breach, is you don't know, because you can see some aspect, I think, of what you're talking about, in how to get the hard ending you have to choose to go with Chica, or you have to choose to go with Monty, I believe. You have like one of two routes. So I think definitely, like, you can kind of see towards the end and towards the beginning, you can really see that, but it's the middle segment where it obviously must have been a bit rushed or something, and the endings where you see it's kind of falling apart a little bit.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. It's I feel like those sections, especially where you start to get to these open areas where there's all these different things you can go to, but you can't go to them because your security level is not upgraded. Like, that feels like it's, you know, you were gonna be able to go here, but we can't do that anymore. You know, that's kind of the vibe it gives. Yeah.
How does this affect the future of the games? How does this affect the future of the games? So games in general, where do we think this whole glitch trap, this Mimic program is going to lead us in ongoing games?
Well, I think that Ruin leaves us on quite a cliffhanger. That's really the series' cliffhanger now. You know, Cassie falls down the elevator. Gregory does that. Supposedly, the real Gregory does that to like keep the Mimic trapped down there because it is a dangerous beast that can never escape. And I think like, you know, I mean, I think Help Wanted specifically, like, Glitch Trap, in my opinion, I think honestly, Help Wanted and Glitch Trap, you know, and Vanny, the elements that move forward, they're kind of, I don't know if they'll appear again. I don't know if they're really that relevant anymore, because it seems that Glitch Trap dies in Princess Quest 3 and or 4, and it seems like Vanny died along with him. So it seems like Help Wanted's arc has kind of ended with Help Wanted 2. And then Secret of the Mimic is giving us the context for all of that, you know?
Yeah.
It's not the end of the Mimic arc, but it's kind of the Glitch Trap and stuff. It's the boot up arc that takes us from the saga to the Mimic. So I think Help Wanted has already affected the future games, but moving forward, I don't think it'll have that much relevance. Other than characters like, I don't know, maybe Tape Girl or Jeremy might come back. But otherwise, I don't really see what other ways it will affect the future, because I think its effect has kind of happened already.
See, I would slightly disagree, purely for the sake of Vanessa, because when it comes to Ruin, I'm pretty sure Gregory mentions that he's contacting one of his friends, and it seems very likely it is Vanessa. So I think specifically from Help Wanted, Vanessa is going to come back, because we know Gregory and Vanessa, probably Freddy, all of them are currently working together, and Cassie is trapped down there with Mimic, which is very scary.
Yeah, definitely. No, you may be right. I think Vanessa probably will come back along with Gregory, because you know, and I mean, to be fair, I guess I feel like, I mean, I didn't really think of Vanessa, because Vanessa doesn't really feel like a big character in Help Wanted. I mean, we play as Vanessa, but it's kind of just like a teased character for Security Breach. But I think Vanessa and Gregory will return. But other than that, I don't think Help Wanted will have much, like, effect on the rest of the series.
See, I think overall with Vanessa, she now knows how the mind virus works. And that's a big thing, is she probably has knowledge as well, because she's now been inside Glitch Trap Mind. If she's retained enough of her memory, same as Gregory, actually Gregory's got more of a chance of it, but if they've retained their memory, it'll be a big clue in defeating the Mimic. And I think also Edwin is not necessarily alive, but alive for longer than Secret of the Mimic. And I think...
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if he's alive now, but he's not dead. I don't think. Initially.
I mean, he might come back, but I think he dies in that tape, doesn't he?
No, because it sounds... I think it sounds more like he's paralyzed. And as I was saying in the Pizzeria Simulator episode, it definitely sounds like he's paralyzed, but you don't have to be that severely injured to be paralyzed, because all it takes is part of your spine to be knocked hard enough, i.e. something landing on top of him, which it very much sounds like. If in the explosion something landed on his back, that's not enough to kill you. It's enough to completely knock you out, sure, but Mimic was left that building. He was gone. He went back to the main Pizzaplex, the factory, so I don't think he's dead. So I think he's not necessarily alive by security breach, but I certainly think he's alive long enough to leave some notes or to leave something that we are going to find later, especially to do with Fiona, MXES. I feel like overall he's the key to stopping things.
Interesting. Yeah, no. Maybe. Yeah, no, that's that definitely, I never heard that before. I never heard that theory either. So that's an interesting one. I think, yeah, no. That's well put.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I feel like overall that's kind of what we're meant to take from this is Vanessa. I feel like we've got the final setup now. I feel like we're coming to like a nice big boss fight after a few more, probably Secret and Mimic DLC, where we're going to find out how Mimic and Afton and Henry and they're all related together. We're missing that puzzle piece, and we're also missing Gregory, but also I kind of wonder now if Cassie, in fact, in herself, is going to become a robot because she's so severely injured, and we know that I can put you back together. We now know that you can potentially use robot parts to bring someone back to life. That's also a whole option, but it's really, yeah. We don't know what's going to happen at this point. It's very much set up for something, but we're at the point where we don't have any clues what it's set up for. It's just going to go boom.
Yeah. I just thought of something just now that I find interesting, and it's kind of almost an example of how the game's lore may have somewhat changed, and this is all in relation to Vanessa, because I think Vanessa's a big mystery, especially with her therapy logs. I think she's a big mystery. That actually might be in one way. Another way Help Wanted lives on. But I did realize something that kind of does indicate like a change, at least an interpretation of what the lore was then versus now, which is that door, like the locked door in the secret ending of Help Wanted.
Yes, yeah.
Because she says, initially we thought that kind of meant, okay, Glitch Trap locks you away, it's the same as the other endings. But there is something interesting to be said about that, because I think in some way that did kind of, like, I think it did limit Glitch Trap's ability to do to Vanessa what he may have done to Gregory. Because Gregory seems to be, like, fully, like possessed, but it seems like Vanessa has, like, that split personality thing going on.
Yeah.
And Vanessa says in her therapy tape, in her, like, in one of her logs, that she, like, in relation to her dad, who may or may not be real, but is in some way representative of William Afton, that she has locked him away, has compartmentalized him. Which is interesting, because that door might not necessarily mean that Glitch Trap has locked us away, but more so that there's now a barrier between Vanessa and Glitch Trap. Hence why there is that, like, fight for control that we don't see in some of the other subjects.
Yeah, she's special in a way.
Just something I thought of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as well.
Yeah.
Now you're saying it. It makes it in Help Wanted seem as if she's aware she's being locked, but she's permanently locked away. She's not let out again. But yet she still somehow has that split personality by security breach, because she's just kind of looking around at Gregory saying, come on, we got to call your parents. Come on, you behave.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I definitely think there's a lot more to learn about Vanessa. I really want to know whether she's related to the Aftons, or if she really is just like a random. 'Cause I don't think she's random. I think she has a very specific connection, specifically with her last name being Vanessa A, and her father supposedly being named Bill. There's something there. Maybe another fun idea that my brain just came up with. Maybe there's something between, like how Edwin and William, they had their issues, and it eventually led to Edwin's company getting completely, taken by William. It would be interesting if that dynamic went down to Mimic and Vanessa, if Vanessa is related to the Afton family going downward.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah. Which would be interesting.
Have you seen the theory as well? The Mimic is trying to bring Afton's families back together.
That the Mimic is trying to bring. Yeah, I actually do believe that to some regard, because I think specifically, like, because another way, and the way I've looked at it for a while, has been that, like, Gregory looks like the crying child, Vanessa looks like Elizabeth. Assuming the Mimic puts itself in Afton's position, it kind of seems like, rather than those, this would be another explanation for why Gregory looks like the crying child without him being a robot, if one would want to go in that direction. It would be that, maybe the Mimic selects victims based on how well it can assimilate them into the Afton family.
Yeah.
And that kind of feels, because it's trying to complete its directive of putting them back together.
Yeah.
Or putting back together the family. And and if that is true, it does really feel like that's represented in the Staffbot family that we see in the Staffbot silo, you know?
Yeah. It's just the only thing with that is obviously where do Cassie... I don't know, Cassie's dad is kind of the whole employee bot's getting mass murdered. That's the whole thing. But where would Cassie come into this? I mean, I guess it's just to get Mimic out of there? But it seems a bit odd, especially when Cassie immediately tries to kill... Mimic immediately tries to kill Cassie right after is a bit odd.
Yeah, I think Mimic was just trying to escape at that point. I think that was the Mimic's that was the Mimic's goal. But I also think that between Security Breach and Ruin, like this is at least my personal headcanon for this, is that Glitch Trap is killed in Princess Quest 3. Like the Glitch Trap persona is killed. This is another reason why I think it could maybe be a persona that it specifically wears in relation to Vanessa. Because it's interesting that in Security Breach, the Mimic becomes Burn Trap in the Burn Trap ending.
Yeah.
But after you kill the Glitch Trap virus at its core, where Princess opens the locked door from FNAF Help Wanted and kills Glitch Trap, now in Ruin, it no longer wears its Burn Trap corpse. And that may be because it was never finished or it's not the same body, but it is interesting that it's been completely cleared, almost as if that persona is no longer of use to it anymore.
Yeah.
Or that it doesn't, that's been killed in a way.
Because it was definitely trying to become Gregory at that point. You can kind of see in the way it stuck the gum kind of stuff to its face and had hair stuck to it. He was trying to change person.
Yeah, you can even see in the way he's crouched as well. That's something,
which is quite funny.
He's crouched. He's trying to turn himself into a child again.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Yes, exactly. Definitely. Which is also interesting because this may just be a technical limitation of the model, but the Mimic from Secret of the Mimic retracts its limbs. But there it's just crouching, and it doesn't seem to have the capability to do that.
I know why that is. I know why.
Because it repaired itself, I'm assuming, but tell me.
Yeah, it's pretty much, so if you look really close up to the models, so there's kind of these spring functions on the Mimic in Secret of the Mimic, but when you look at the Mimic in Ruin, if you look, he's missing those functions, and because he's completely different, he no longer has the ability to fold over himself because he doesn't have the joints and mechanics that were there before, so he's physically incapable of doing so.
That's interesting. Yeah, no. That's pretty cool. I assume that's probably because he had to repair himself at some point after something. Which, a fun detail I noticed about his Ruin design as well, is, that, like, chase he has, that in the good ending of Secret of the Mimic, we repair Mimic with our data diver, right?
Yeah.
That seems to be caged up in his Ruin design. He has, like, things protecting it, almost as if he doesn't want to be fixed anymore.
Yeah. And it kind of makes sense because I can definitely see a new narrative coming across this whole time. He's been trying to defend himself because if you look at who he's killed technicians that were coming in to fix him. But if fixing him is completely wiping his personality and who he is, it half makes sense because, if someone was coming for you and was going to erase completely who you are and all your memories, you're not going to want that. And, like, he didn't kill Edwin, but he left Edwin there because he knew Edwin was the only one who had the ability to fix him. And even in the parachute ending, he limps away, he's injured because of what he did, but he had to because, again, he would be wiped.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I think the question that brings to my mind though is like how conscious is the Mimic? Like, is it because like, if it's just mimicking things and seeing the way people act, what would give it the directive to protect itself in that? I mean, we know why it's violent, right? It's that is to protect itself. But like stuff like trying to stop its like personality from being erased, where does it get that directive from? That's what I wonder. Because how is it in some way conscious?
And I think that's going to be the final theme, is we realise in that last moment that Mimic in itself probably like cowers away in fear or something when we defeat it, because, you know, it might be that it genuinely developed humanity because it's experienced love for its family. It's experienced sadness when he lost his mum and stuff, and now it's experienced anger. It's pretty much had the whole human experience. So it might be it's gotten to the point where he genuinely is scared and is afraid and wants to protect itself. I mean, even like it might even be to do with the fact that there's a theory that Fiona Mimic killed David. So it could also be from that. Like,
yeah,
seeing
I heard
death
that one. Yeah, no, definitely. I think, like, and that really plays back into that theme of, like, who is the robot really, you know? Yeah, definitely. No. Very, very interesting. Yeah, because I guess it would have picked up on those things as it went through its life, I guess. Huh. Interesting stuff.
Whole
Yeah.
thing. I will say though, really oddly, something that I've picked up on now as we've been talking, the Mimic can't have had the post-it room in the security breach. Whether that's an error or not, if he's locked in the basement, he can't have been up there learning. That can't have been him. So it might actually be Gregory. It might have been Gregory this whole time learning, because the Mimic is physically incapable because he's locked in a cement basement. So.
Yeah, or it could have been Gregory, or if its program was put into literally anything else, it could have been like, you know, that as well. Like, but it could be Gregory. I see that one. Yeah. It could be either one. That's interesting. Was it locked in the basement before security breach though? Would you say?
Oh, that's a good point, because Gregory's basement is Gregory's backpack is down there. It's just where was it otherwise? Maybe he was hiding out somewhere. I feel like we're very much missing that scene, because Candy Cadet kind of tells it to us how it went down, how Vanessa and Gregory, it seems Vanessa and Gregory were the ones that locked it away. But are we missing, like, what happened there? I'd like to see that, because if it really was feeling humanity, then it would have been afraid in that moment.
Yeah, no, definitely. But the question really is, where was it in security breach? Because I don't think it was burn trap. I don't think the body was burn trap.
No.
No. So yeah, no, that's interesting. Do you think that the Mimic body, or like the M2 that's locally stored in the Mimic, and the like whatever Mimic program, I think it's M2, that possesses like the one that's infecting the neural network?
Yeah.
Do you reckon those communicate with each other? That's the question.
I think they must do, because everyone... Yeah, there must be some way to do it. I don't know how, but I feel like there's definitely... Even from Fiona, although Fiona now seems to be a rabbit, which is really odd. But
yeah, I don't think Mexus is Fiona. Fiona creates a program called Cradle. .exe. I think Mexus is the Cradle.
Yeah, but the odd thing is, when we go down and we find the cradle, which is the machine, Fiona's voice is talking from it. It says Fiona. So it's just, what... Is there a possibility that the Fiona bot was actually evil and that has gotten out or something? It's such an enigma I'm excited to see the answer to, because we're missing something here. Like, why was Fiona in there now, and why is it now a purple rabbit? Like,
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think that was any of the Murrays who did that though. I think that may have been Henry or something who had tampered with the machinery after. I do think though, because like, what was the Mexus, like, we found out what Mexus like stood for.
Yeah.
Secret of the Mimic. Was that again? It was Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Experimental storage.
Okay, because that begs the question if Mexus is the name of the character. It begs the question of if Mexus is the name of the rabbit, or if it's the name of the machine that holds the rabbit.
And it also begs the question, where is Fiona? If she's not in there anymore, because she's not speaking to us, where is she gone? Like, could it even be possible that, like, there's multiple Mimic programs and that was what's infecting Vanessa, not Glitchtrap or something? It's very...
Yeah.
Is a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. That is a good call out, by the way. Where is Fiona? Because, like, it is weird that she doesn't speak to us in the game, like she does in Secret of the Mimic.
It's very intentional, I feel like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, that's very weird. Where is M1? Maybe Mimic M2 actually found a way to eliminate M1 in some way.
And that might
be very interesting.
Oh, actually, it could have even been Edwin that had done it. If I'm right and Edwin is alive, Edwin himself could have done it, and that's how we defeat M2 by Edwin's note being saying, "Oh, I nearly died doing it, but I figured out how to turn off this program and this is how you do it," kind of thing.
Yeah, it could have been. Very much could have been. You also, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you notice there's like a lot of the same plot narratives repeating. Like,
Yeah.
this is actually, since we're on the segment of how Help Wanted affects the future, I think another thing you can see is that Help Wanted's plot like threads are very like they're repeating. They're being mimicked. The Mimic is like mimicking Help Wanted. Because in Help Wanted, the Mimic tricks us by using the voice of Tape Girl to trick us into putting it back together, and then escaping through us.
Yeah.
Then, in Ruin, it mimics somebody we trust who gives us instructions, misleads us, and tricks us into setting it free again.
Yeah.
And then, in Secret of the Mimic, at least in the bad ending, it deceives us into, pretending to be our, like, instruction giver, and then tricks us into setting it free. And they even hammer that in even like closer to home in Secret of the Mimic because it parallels the Help Wanted ending in the bad ending. So the Mimic has this like it almost has its own like killer's signature in a way.
Yeah, it's getting
which is super interesting. Yeah. I think that is definitely like that's another way that you like Help Wanted kind of extends it, how Help Wanted affects the future kind of, because clearly it did that in Secret of the Mimic. And then, when it's now stuck inside the game, it just says, I'm gonna do that again.
Let me do it again. I mean, it's working, so...
Yeah, let me try that again. Yeah, no. So, yeah. It's interesting to see how it operates, because it clearly has this pattern of how it does things, how it gets itself out of its different conundrums.
I definitely think we're building up to like a FNAF 6 moment at this point. There's so many clues. I really think one game, probably... We're going to get the DLC, we're going to get, hopefully the Click Team game is going to come through at some point, which is the past, and then we are going to get a Security Breach sequel, and that is going to be the big, everything's coming together, this is what's happened, this is, we're going to get answers. I feel very confident we're not going to get scotted this time, and we're going to get a definitive answer as to what's been going on overall.
Definitely. Dude, what's the Click Team game?
So it was announced about a year ago, and when it released, it looked like it was a plushie and Freddy, but unwithered.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that's 5 Laps at Freddy's, sadly.
Yeah, I've heard speculation it's not, in theory. I've heard that it might be 2, because the initial teaser was completely different. So that's why it's like, potentially. But I think at least we're getting a Secret Mimic DLC. Potentially one more game, but I think we're getting like a big finale soon. I think we're definitely at that point where we've gotten so many answers in Secret of the Mimic, and then I think DLC is going to give us a lot of answers as opposed to William and Mimic and how that relationship is, and then we're pretty much ready for just a big, this is what's happened.
Yeah. Yes. Little side note, I really hope in that finale, this is my own personal... I haven't met a single person who agrees with me, but I hope Cassie's dead. And I hope that Cassie possesses Roxy.
See,
that's my hope.
I think Cassie's realization, we're going to play as Cassie, and there's going to be a moment where we look down. We've never seen a mirror or anything, but we look down and realize we're not fully human. But I think Gregory's going to die. I think if Gregory is the Mimic, I think all the Mimics have to die. I think Fiona has to die. I think Mimic 2 has to die. And I think Gregory has to sacrifice himself as well. When he realizes what he is, if he doesn't already know, he will definitely
That will be a tragic ending if we actually just have to watch, because it could be like the Mimic, but it'd be even more like, imagine if you have these hosts for Glitch Trap, and Glitch Trap keeps coming back through them.
Yeah.
And the only way to defeat it is to have them all die.
Have them dead. Oh.
That would be tragic. But I wouldn't put it past FNAF. FNAF likes to do those like subtle... FNAF really likes to tease like some of the darkest like lore bits ever, by the way. Like it never has explicit gore. It instead is just like, tee-hee, 5 kids are dead, guys, tee-hee. Like it just like teases these like really disturbing plot points.
And then it's like, oh.
yeah, exactly. Like it's just like, it just very calmly in its series that is, mostly consumed by children, just very calmly and very subtly, just like tells a really dark story that touches on a lot of subjects, but because it's so subtle, it can get away with it,
Yeah, because it's like secret enough. I think it's going to be Gregory. I think Gregory is an imitation of David or Crying Child or someone, but I think it has to end as it started, with the Mimic, the babysitter, and David being together again. I think it's going to maybe be blown up or something, but I really think it's going to end with those two, Gregory and Thingy. Maybe Vanessa's going to die as well. That is entirely possible, but I think it is going to come down to Gregory and Mimic. That's going to be the big final farewell.
Yeah. That's gonna be interesting if so. I wonder how they're gonna execute that, because it almost feels like you can't really just have the Mimic die. Like, you've proven it's too like good at not dying. It's like better than Afton. It one-ups Afton at that whole not dying thing. That it really needs to have some surefire death to like fully like prove that it's dead. So I do really find that interesting how they're gonna conclude that plot point.
I think it's going to get an explosion. I think Gregory and Mimic are going to stand together, like hold hands or something, because they are the last remnants of what was before. If Fiona's dead, if the glitch trap is dead, it's just those two. They'll blow up the Pizzaplex, and that means it can't exist anymore. It will just be gone, because anything in the Pizzaplex will be gone.
I will riot, like, out of joy. Like, I will scream of joy if Gregory and the Mimic hold hands while burning next to a carousel like at Fall Fest.
Yes, that would be so good.
That would be amazing, especially if maybe you had Mimic become M1 and you had Gregory be M2 David.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that would be fantastic.
So good. I don't think it's entirely out of the realm of possibility as well. It definitely feels like the only way we're getting out of this is a fire. That's how you do things in FNAF. That's how you stop things.
Yeah.
Burn it. So
definitely. I don't know if it's fully relevant, but I'll bring it up anyway because I've been watching a lot of these, like a lot of theories and the I've been paying attention to the FNAF community and their the theories that are surrounding Secret of the Mimic, and I saw some like interesting ones regarding like the security logbook and how there's the one spirit speaking to the other, and that one seems to be Crying Child initially, but it asks it things like, do you remember your plastic purple telephone? And then it asks it, was your favorite ride the carousel? Which there isn't a carousel in FNAF 4, but there is a carousel in Edwin Murray's like place. Yeah. And it does kind of bring up this idea of like, is it David's spirit, or is it the Crying, or is Crying Child and David somehow merged? It's weird. There is some connection between the two, I swear. I just thought I'd bring that up. I think it's interesting.
I agree.
Of how David will play in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Gregory is 100% somehow an amalgamation of them. I think it's very unlikely this is a human child, especially with the homeless ending. Again, it's not canon, but he clearly had nowhere to go, and his only thoughts was, oh, I must sleep on the streets now. Like, it's so definitive.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think I saw a video that was talking about the fact that, like, I guess this may be some evidence, or this may play into the idea that Gregory might be human, but it could also play into the robot idea. But it's the idea that Gregory has an identity, like, he knows he's Gregory, and then, but maybe he was in some way brainwashed to think he was David. This would again be going off the assumption that he's human, and then that's why in the intro to Security Breach, he kind of stutters before saying his name.
Yeah, that is odd.
He was about to say David.
Yeah, I think.
And it's
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you go.
I was just gonna say one last thing regarding the security logbook. Like the idea that the other spirit's name is Dave is really interesting.
Odd. Yeah.
Especially if it's David.
I mean, do you know what the Crying Child's name is incredibly likely to be?
Yeah?
David.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very likely to be David. Which is just... It's very interesting. And I feel like, when you look at the rooms being similar, and Edwin's property probably being Afton's property, there's something I feel like Afton and his experiments were in some way trying to recreate Tiger Rock, the Tiger Rock ghost, or something like that. Was trying to recreate the circumstances of David's death. I don't think he planned it out, but it has to be something like that, where he was trying to recreate David through the crying child.
I mean, it even links to sister location, the baby isn't mine. It might even be that it wasn't the child or something. It might even be a recreation of a dead child. It might be that they just straight up brought the robot child over, like...
Yeah, definitely. Which just made me think of two things. One, what if David's body is in the box?
That's what I thought it was crying child's body, but if they are one and the same, I wouldn't be surprised.
I thought it was crying child's body too, but it would be interesting if the crying child not being able to open that box, or I don't know if it's the crying child opening the box at the end of the game. I don't know. The box is interesting, but it could also be Afton holding onto this memento of David, or maybe even Edwin holding onto this memento of David, and then William Afton stealing it, and he's essentially trying to, whatever that box represents, it represents him trying to open it in his own way, which would be through crying child. It's interesting. I also, in relation to the baby isn't mine, I saw it was FNAF who brought up the idea that the circus baby's programming, the one that conflicts with Elizabeth in sister location, is Mimic.
Oh, I've seen that one, yeah.
Which is interesting because then in Help Wanted 2 we see a drawing of Helpy escaping like a burning building, and that would say that the chip escaped the FNAF 6 fire, and that was M2 or M1 or whatever. I don't know. I just felt like that was, and I feel like that could especially play into that whole the baby isn't mine thing.
I personally think it's Lefty that escaped, by the way, because someone very recently pointed out that Lefty is the only one that we never see actually on the screen when he's talking about burning everyone. And then later on, there's so much puppet symbolism all throughout the Pizzaplex. So it's entirely possible that it is also the puppet that somehow got out, which I don't know how that would play in, but I would be very interested how.
Yeah. That is interesting. That is interesting. I don't know if I believe that the puppet's back, but there is puppet imagery.
Something to do with the puppet. Something's there. Maybe even in the Mimic program, but the puppet is somehow relevant in this. I don't know how, but she is.
Jackie is very much puppet.
Same music box.
Same music box, same similar design. It's a female character, clown-esque character with rosy cheeks, red lips, and like these like looks to it, and the long arms and stuff, and popping out of a music box that plays the same song. So
it's interesting. Yeah. It's very similar.
Very similar. I think that also plays into I don't know if David's body's in the box, but the idea that the box might be something from Edwin's place. One thing that I think I saw brought up on like one of Markiplier's live streams, oddly enough, the idea that there's two locks in the box, which could symbolize that you need two people to open it, two people with two keys to open it. So Henry and William.
Yeah.
And then if that was something from Edwin's, it could be like something they locked away, because we both know that like Henry and William, they kind of devised this scheme to destroy Edwin. So perhaps what's locked it's something they decided to take to the grave. It's a bad thing they did that they've now locked away. Similar to Help Wanted, how they locked away.
Locked away.
I've locked away. That is actually another theme that comes up. That's very interesting.
So anyway. I know this won't happen. This is kind of funny, but imagine if the box had the Mimic schematics in this entire time, because that's what they stole, and that might have still been in there. So then it ends up the box. We find that in the latest FNAF game, and we find the way to defeat the Mimic or something. Or even like Gregory's schematics as well.
That would be so interesting. It's either that or the idea that the box had Mimic in it. The Mimic folded up into it.
Yeah, definitely like the Gregory Mimic. I feel like if anyone was in there currently, I think there was a chance it was Gregory himself. I don't think that it's entirely impossible that he got himself out, or even someone got him out. Even William could have done, but I definitely think there's a very good chance, because thing is, if Gregory is the costume and he's missing the inside, it's very, very likely that William made the exoskeleton. What do you call it? The casing, I guess? The casing.
Yeah,
he made
like...
the casing based on his own kid and was going to put the mimic in, but never was able to get things, so...
Yeah, I know. I see that one.
Mm.
I think the text is interesting. The reason why the thing, like, the text, some things are best left forgotten forever. That feels very mournful, which is why I feel like what's in the box was maybe something that at some point should have been opened, but now shouldn't be opened.
Yeah.
And it's a secret that William and Henry, in the only form of unity that they have, because otherwise they hate each other at this point in the series, they're burying it, right? They're taking it to the grave. That's my interpretation of what that box means to some small degree.
Yeah. I 100% see that, because I definitely think that Matt Pat was right in that the contents of the box has changed. I think it definitely was the crying child's body at some point. That's what was in there. I think that was it, and it was probably too gory or something to show as well. And then it probably changed something. But I think if we're thinking of it in the current timeline, it could be the schematics. It could easily be, as you said, it could definitely be something to do with the Edwin. Here, something they saved. Maybe even that's where Fiona is, and Fiona's the one, because she knows how to build the cradle. She's the one that knows how to defeat Mimic once and for all.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It could be. I think you could also, if you want to go like more simple with it. Although I don't believe this theory personally, but in that ending, before the box, where the crying child's in the void with all the toys, and then Fredbear talks to him and says all those things. Yes. And every line a toy disappears into the darkness, and at the very end the crying child disappears into the darkness. So I've seen some interpretations of that cutscene that say that that's each one of those elements being put into the box. It's his toys and then his body. He's in the box with all his toys who he considered to be his friends. So he's in the box with his friends. That's freaky, I know.
Generally, the idea of crying child's body being in that box generally gives me goosebumps. It's such a horrific image, horrific concept that there is a child's body inside it, and we've been looking at it this whole time. Oh, not nice.
Oh, I know. I completely agree. It's weird. It's scary. Yes.
Yeah, but it was entirely possible. I almost wonder if that's why Scott didn't, because it's so unnerving. Unlike FNAF, which has been kind of hinted, this is so that's a body.
He did say he was afraid that the general audiences would be unhappy with it, and it's very hard to figure out if he meant that meant that it was so extreme that he was afraid to reveal it, or if it was so underwhelming that he was afraid to reveal it. We don't. It could be either one of those.
Completely, yeah.
Yep. But definitely.
Gush about the game. So, is there anything you particularly liked about the game, anything you particularly disliked, had an issue with, or anything you just want to say in general about the game? Feel free
all right. I want to gush about Glitch Trap. I love Glitch Trap so much. Glitch Trap is the reason I like Vanny, and Glitch Trap and Vanny are the reason I put up with Security Breach, and they're the reason I like the Steelable era to an extent. And it's also the reason why I absolutely adore Secret of the Mimic with all its stitched costumes and stuff. Glitch Trap is my favorite William Afton design, hands down. It's my favorite rendition of William Afton. It, when you look at Springtrap, you can think of a lot of words. It's a monster. It's like a brute force, killer. But the words that come to mind when you look at Glitch Trap is just child murder. It's somebody who isn't particularly big, scary, or strong. He looks kind of pathetic and wimpy, but that mixed with the context that he is he snuffs out the lives of children and the people who are weaker than him and defend, people who can't defend against him. It's that's Glitch Trap feels like it really recaptures that essence of what made the masked mascot murderer from FNAF 1 feel so scary. It's just it's not this big brute or anything. It's just this. It's just a child murder, and that's just so plain and so blunt and realistic, and that's what makes him so terrifying to me. The way he lures you backstage with cake and stuff, and then he just just kills you, just like that. He just feels like such a grounded representation of what Afton was, and to me that's like the scariest thing from the franchise. It's just like this killer, just a serial killer. Like that's so to me, I love Glitchtrap for that reason. I think that he nails it for me. He absolutely nails the things I love about William Afton as like an entity in the franchise. So I love that, and I love the way they like represented I love Pizza Party. I love that it's all like Fever Dream-esque and kind of like it's very reminiscent of like FNAF 1. FNAF 1 felt very Fever Dream-esque to me. Like that's what I like about the early FNAF games, is that they have things like, you know, these creepy dolls, and they have these walls that change, and like these posters that like move, and these heads that stare at you, and it just has this like this paranormal aura that's just like it's freaky, it's terrifying, and it kind of like there's something about how it feels very like it does a very good job of grounding itself, you know, at the same time. Like it's not like a ghost that's floating around and trying to kill you, but it's like these it's very like, it reminds me of The Shining kind of, you know? It's surreal, it's scary, and that's Pizza Party feels like the culmination of that. I really like Glitchtrap as a character, and I really like the way Help Wanted kind of represented the early parts of the franchise, and I personally just adore that about the game. I think that in terms of negatives, I mean, I didn't really like the things turning into games. That was like probably the only thing I didn't like at the time. But other than that, like, I found the tapes also really fun. I found it really like immersive, the way that you're actually like playing as a beta tester. It makes you feel like you're a part of the story.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very like creepypasta. It to me, Help Wanted kind of is reminiscent of I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with the creepypasta Ben Drowned?
Yes, I am.
Like yes, those like haunted video game creepypastas. It really feels like I'm in one of those when I'm playing it, you know, or when I first played it. You know, these like these digital entities like speaking to you through the game and telling the story that's very brutal. To me, that made Help Wanted feel very grounded, you know? It felt very grounded. After FNAF 6 and FNAF Sister Location, where we had like these spirits and metal, and I love those games, just for the record, but it became very like epic and very fantasy-esque. It really felt like a return to this like fear of the mundane, you know? Just like this like these are regular places. This is a regular scenario, and here is the horrible truth of what's happened. Like it's I love Help Wanted. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, especially with Glitchtrap. There's something so unnerving about him, how he just looks at you smiling and waving, and he dances as you're dead. And I think it's the same kind of uncomfortableness of the idea of the crying child's body in the box, because there's a psychological thing where if there's 50,000 people die in an accident, you are unable to feel as much empathy because your brain is overwhelmed. Whereas if you lock in this one thing that's realistic, if you hear, I don't know, like a mother dies in an accident, you're then automatically going to feel more sympathetic. It's like a whole human brain thing. And I feel like seeing Glitchtrap like that is so much more unnerving, because no longer is it we just hearing of this one guy that did this, or seeing like the decaying body of this one guy going through this. We're looking at the perspective of a child. And this child is seeing someone they trust waving at us, smiling, and not a single care, a smile on his face as he commits murder of innocent children, and dancing as he looks at us. And that's Mimic's interpretation of him as well. And that's just,
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I completely agree. It's like, to me, like the scary, like, you know, FNAF, it does different kinds of horror, but like what really hits like the nail on the coffin for me is like Glitchtrap and those FNAF 1 articles. Like, there's something, to me, like there's one thing seeing like, you know, William Afton move around and do spooky things, but it's another thing like in FNAF 1 to hear about, like, just reading a news article about a man was caught on the security cameras during the late operational hours of the pizza. Like, it's the way it's conveyed feels realistic in FNAF 1. Like, I couldn't imagine like a lot of the other stuff, but I can imagine reading a news article about a man wearing a costume in a kids entertainment center and then using it to like murder children and to like gain the trust of children, and that's very psychologically scary. And I think a big part of that psychological horror as well is like it feels realistic, because you could imagine that happen. That kind of thing does happen, you know. You know, creepy like murders and like bad people, they do lure children away, and that is just like such a psychologically horrifying thing because it feels realistic. And I think also like also just like the concept in general of like, you know, of like a safe space, like a place where, you know, kids, a kids entertainment venue, having somebody who works on the inside, an employee doing that, like preying and murdering children, that is inherently terrifying. It's a terrifying thought, and that combined with the fact that it's realistic, and again, Help Wanted with like you know, with Glitch Trap and his kind of like realistic portrayal of that idea. And you know, it doesn't do like these like, it doesn't play scary music or anything. It has a hard mode that plays happy like don 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 type music.
Yeah.
With like this like, you know, it's I've actually like this kind of horror. It's a very specific kind of horror. I like to call it like sick joke horror. It's like the type of horror where you take something that in context is bad and scary and horrifying, and you know it's horrifying when you see it, but it's presented in a way that isn't scary. It's presented almost like a humorous or like fun thing, but the contents are scary. But it's framed to be like fun. That's scary because of the dissonance, you know? It's like it's this entire thing of like that contrast paired with that like realism of the whole thing makes Help Wanted psychologically terrifying to me.
Really brought FNAF back to its core, I think.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would completely agree. Yeah. No, absolutely. So I'm a Help Wanted fan. I love that game.
I agree.
Yes.
I think it definitely got a lot more negative feedback when it came out because people were just scared of change, but overall it was such a good game, and I think it really deserved more. Yeah.
Agree, absolutely.
And that's it today for the Fazlore Podcast. Special thanks to our lovely guest,
JokerNoob.
Yep.
Yes.
So where can we find you?
So you can find me on YouTube. I have a channel called JokerNoob in which I just kind of post whatever. And you can also find me on Gamejolt. I've posted a few games there. If you'd like, you can check out some of my work. I've made a FNAF fan game called Now Hiring, which Rewin Voice is in. So you Rewin fans, check that stuff out. And I'm also right now I'm working on my own horror game called Sammy, which I'd love if you could wishlist on Steam. And other than that, that's it for me. Yeah.
Right. And that'll be it for today. Signing off and see you later.
Catch you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Hi there, PNG Win here. A reminder, all profits from this series goes towards Dorco's London Marathon 2026 fundraiser, in which he is raising funds for Samaritans, a charity for people who are struggling with their mental health, offering support lines and services so nobody is ever alone. It's a wonderful cause, so please consider donating with the link in my bio or scanning this QR code. Thank you.